This panel, Expanding the Horizon, State Government's Role in Supporting Arts and Culture, will take our panelists through understanding how state government agencies are helping to sustain and grow the creative workforce. And we're honored to have this conversation moderated by a longtime champion of the arts and public service, Danielle Brazell, Executive Director of the California Arts Council. Joining her on stage are our panelists. Kirk, Senior Advisor for Economic Policy at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Woohoo! Dr. Tara Lynn Gray, Director of the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. And Abby Snay, Deputy Secretary for the Future of Work at the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency. Please give them an Arts and Culture round of applause and welcome to the California Arts and Culture Center. Danielle.
I'm just going to say how much I absolutely adore this body of people and this group of people right here. And in a sense, we come from really different worlds. And I have to say, you know, the California Arts Council was created in the 1900s. It's my running joke these days. It was an idea that was really made for the 1970s. But in many ways, our entire arts and cultural ecology is a system that is in some ways incredibly effective, and in other ways puts us outside of what you all are doing. And one of the things that we in the arts and cultural sector have been trying to address is how are we able to, because we're all serving the same people. We may do it through a nonprofit structure, we may do it as independent artists or arts workers or gig workers, but we're all Californians, we're all entrepreneurs. And so the idea with this panel is to really kind of wrangle this really big, challenging question that we have is how can we be of service to the same challenges and goals that you are trying to do? And before we get into that, it might be helpful for a little bit of a grounding exercise for you each just to take a few minutes and share with this incredible group of humans what you do and why you do it and what's in your portfolio. And so maybe we'll start with Dr. Gray and go to Abby and then Derek. Oh, your mic is hot.
Oh, hot for a hot crowd! Woo! So first and foremost, I want to thank Julie and Terry, and I want to thank Danielle. It is still critical that we can gather en masse to talk about important topics, and certainly the arts is an important topic. At the Office of the Small Business Advocate, where I am the director, we really try to provide support and resources, access to information, new markets, and all of that through, over the past 4 years, what has been 14 programs and $5.3 billion in appropriations. And while that sounds like a lot, the most important part of it is the individual small businesses that we work to support in this state, 4.2 million of them. And last year's theme was artwork is real work. Yes, and though it was last year's theme, it's still very important, and that's how we see the creative economy at OSBA. So we're happy to be here, my team and I, and to support what is a significant conversation about how the creative economy should not be separate from the overall economy in the state of California. 4.2 million small businesses have a significant output, provide 2/3 of all net new jobs, half of all private sector jobs. So there's no way that we can talk about economic success in the state of California without considering all of the sectors, and the creative economy is one of them. I see you, sister. Yes.
Abby, you get to follow Dr. Gray, so.
Thanks, Danielle. So I want to thank you for having me here today and for being able to talk with all of you really about work and the creative economy. And I also want to thank Danielle and the Arts Council for the opportunity to be part of this year's Creative Economy Working Group. I know I learned so much and have an even deeper appreciation for the role that arts play in this state. I have spent my whole career around employment, workforce development, and wake up every morning because I believe so strongly that it is work that gives us dignity in life. It is such an important part of our identity, and that people deserve to have good jobs, jobs that can sustain themselves and their families. So after running a community-based organization for many, many years, I joined the labor agency in early 2020 and have been working with amazing people at the labor agency throughout the administration to really look at the future of work and build out workforce programs, policy, funding, improve systems that really get to our core value of equity and do that through our really driving principle of partnership. You know, partnership among state agencies, partnership with our community groups, partnerships with colleges and our education providers. We increasingly, we've been a core part of the development of the governor's master plan for career education that was released a couple of weeks ago, that it really, I think, is becoming the umbrella for all of our work. And the career ed master plan was really is designed to increase equitable access to well-paid jobs by creating and strengthening education and training pathways that respond to changing and emerging needs of the economy. And you'll hear Derek in a minute. It's really the complement to Jobs First. The master plan is about breaking down silos, aligning funding and resources at the state level, at the regional level, expanding work-based learning and apprenticeship, and increasing skills-based hiring so that we can create tools such as a career passport so that employers can hire people based on what they can do, not on which degrees they have, and not to use four-year degrees as a proxy for a certain level of thinking, or other skills. We focus on a sector approach, a target population approach, and a systems approach. We have very deep partnerships and have invested significantly in healthcare training to meet the demands of an aging population and to fill critical roles in healthcare and to bring greater diversity to healthcare jobs. Similar work in agriculture, looking for career pathways for farm workers and infrastructure and construction, using so far we think they're solid, the federal infrastructure dollars to create pipelines into good jobs in construction and infrastructure, and arts, media, and entertainment, largely through working, I think, with the really impressive work that Allison Frenzel and her team are doing at the Department of Education. We really look at focusing on people who have faced historic systemic barriers to employment. And there are three groups that really rise to the surface. Opportunity youth, and we've stretched the definition from 16 to 30, and really looking at those youth who are connected neither to school nor to work, to find very meaningful ways to re-engage them, help them get the skills they need to get good jobs. Adults and youth with disabilities, some very exciting partnerships on the horizon with the Department of Rehabilitation, and immigrants and refugees. Very, very important, obviously, historically for this state, and especially now in the current climate. And we want to make sure that the workforce system is working, frankly, a lot better than it currently does. And we're looking at strengthening our partnerships, leveraging resources with the community colleges, really working with our community-based organizations. Having come from one, I've been really passionate about bringing CBOs into that system, and doing a much better job on our data. So we really understand which programs are working better than others and why. And we're excited to be a close partner now with the Cradle to Career system, which just today launched its first dashboard, which is really linking the education and soon the workforce programs people participate in with longitudinal employment data and earnings. So we really can start making some connections between selection of majors, courses of study, and what that means for employment and earnings. So I could go on and on. Why don't you?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a privilege to be here. I'm going to start by saying if you keep seeing me check my phone, it's because it's after 5, and I have a 2.5-year-old at home. And it's just like I don't remember the last time I was out in public after 5 o'clock when I left the office. So it's like this inherent need to see if my child, who is perfectly fine, is fine. Not because I don't think you're all really fabulous. So just forgive me for being a dad for a minute. But I'm Derek. I serve as the senior advisor for economic policy at GoBiz. I am so privileged. I consider myself like an all-around, everyday Californian. I grew up in the Central Valley. I have lived in San Diego in the southern border, in Orange County, on the Central Coast in San Luis Obispo County, and now here in Sacramento. I come with this really, really distinct knowledge of the importance of the economy and the regions and all of the places that you represent up and down our state as I get to work at GoBiz and on behalf of the administration every single day. The work that I get to do is all around California Jobs First. If you have heard of it, this administration has really taken a targeted and proactive approach to saying, California, the government has for far too long taken a very hands-off approach to letting jobs and workforce development and training in the economy just happen. And we let that happen over there, and we operate over here. And this administration came in 6 years ago now and said, hey, we have to be more proactive in the ways in which we're connecting the dots and connecting people and being stewards of the world's 5th largest economy, and how we're ensuring that we're building bridges so that everyone can access the opportunities here in California. So that's what I get to do every day, connecting each of our regions across the state with building out comprehensive economic development strategies and identifying where they see the opportunities for jobs and their economy in the future. And through that, we developed and announced a few months ago the first statewide economic development strategy that California has had in over 20 years. And a significant roadmap and blueprint, as we call it, for us as we're moving forward. And to Tara's point, really, really particularly call out the work of the importance of the creative economy as one of the 10 sectors in California that lifts up our economy and makes us the 5th largest economy in the world. So happy to be with you all, for sure.
And I want to just, I think that right in and of itself, the fact that the creative economy is embedded within the first ever proactive approach to addressing California's economy as the 5th largest economy in the world. How do you, we've been grappling with this with the Creative Economy Working Group, which is, the California Arts Council is developing a plan for the creative economy for the state of California. No pressure there. But one of the things that we've really grappled with is if you can't define it, how do you measure it, and how do you know you're successful? So in terms of, sure, I want to ask you the question of how do you define the creative economy, but I won't, because I think that's a little bit more difficult because of its complexity. But how do you think about, when your 2-year-old is you know, getting ready to fly, when you launch your 2-year-old in 20 years, how will you measure success of Jobs First in your mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so we took a really, really different approach with the development of this economic blueprint. Historically, the way we would have done it is that someone like me in my ivory tower a couple of blocks over would have said, let me tell you what the California economy looks like now, and let me tell you where it should go, because I get to live and breathe this every day, and forgive me, but you have no idea what you're talking about. That's, first of all, it's wrong. I don't know. I mean, I've lived in a lot of places in California, and I'm very proud of that, and I don't know what is going on in every community. And so we flipped it on its head and said, hey, our economy is too big to plan from the top down. Let's plan from regions up. Let's understand the work of the regions and the priorities of the regions across our state. And so we funded these regional strategies and said, you tell us what's important. You use your words. What's important to you? You tell us and define your industries and help us frame out what you would like your regional economies to look like in the future. So we divided the state into these 13 regions. We spent 3 years of, I'm surprised I still have hair, because the hardest thing I have ever experienced in my life, getting community groups to sit at the same table and cast visions that they all can start to rally behind for their economies moving forward. We took those plans up to the statewide level, and we started to wrap our minds around how do we now take this, because yes, we are 13 regions, and we are but one state of California. So how do we start to tell this story collectively together? So for us, the creative economy isn't defined by me. It's defined largely by the 13 regions, many of which, probably because of Julie and rallying all of you in the room, sat at these regional tables and helped to frame up the creative economy as a really, really critically important piece, from small local artisans and artists to the film and television industry in LA and everywhere in between, as part of California's economic base. So as we think about success moving forward, success for us is ensuring that over the next 10 years that we've kind of cast this blueprint, that we're actually moving to implement it, that the priorities and the ideas and the initiatives that you all identified and that all of our regions identified and that we've brought up to the statewide level are starting to be implemented, that we're partnering with the labor agency and our workforce providers and our educators to ensure clear pathways, that as folks are being trained, we're ensuring that there are actually jobs for them to go into, or creative opportunities for them to become entrepreneurs and launch small businesses and get support from CalOSBA and the SBDC network to start to build that interconnection and start to really recognize that communities and economies are more interconnected than we ever would admit. It's not a creative economy example, but it's an example I use all the time because it's not real. So if you're from Kern County, forgive me. This is just an example. But like for far too long, we have trained folks in Kern County in the life sciences industry, but our business development folks aren't actually trying to go out and seek life sciences companies. And so we've created opportunities in spaces where people have to move away from their homes to get economic opportunity, rather than building economic opportunity, creating entrepreneurial activity, thinking about workforce training, and ensuring we're attracting jobs into those communities that are aligned with what people want. I say the only reason that I would leave Sacramento is if my kid decides to move and go to college somewhere else, and I pray to God that he stays here because I love this town and this place. So for me, like 20 years from now, success is that Austin has any opportunity in the world here in the Sacramento region. No disrespect to the other 12 regions in the state, but here in this place, and gets to choose what he wants to do, which is not something, unfortunately, but not something historically that many folks have had in California.
I love that. I love that vision for Austin. And I think that one of the things that, and I want to thank Abby Snay for her just incredible thought partnership on this creative economy plan. But what has become really clear to us at the California Arts Council and the Creative Economy Working Group, of which we have many, many representatives here in this room, and I want to give you all a shout out for thanking you for your service, but that the economy and workforce are inextricably tied, They are linked deeply. And so, Abby, how does the Department of Labor and Workforce Development think about the labor needs of California over the next 5, 10 years? And what are your thoughts about how the creative sector will change during that time? No, I mean, it's a softball question.
Sure. I mean, we are at a moment. I'm
Wait a
trying to
moment.
think of the right metaphor. Are we on a precipice, a turning point,
Paradigm shift?
a crossroads?
A cliff?
Probably all of those. But we've got a few factors that are shaping the economy, and the economy is the workforce is the economy. And I think we have to always think about it in those terms. I mean, right now, at this moment, we're all reeling and confused, with the chaotic rollout of the tariffs and what they mean for just about every industry in the state. That's just creating uncertainty in the stock market and people's retirement savings. And, are we, at the labor agency, are we gearing up for another recession and having to roll out, massive unemployment again? So that's almost the backdrop for everything else. We also think about, and I know this is such a huge central factor in the creative economy, is the impact of artificial intelligence, and how it is likely to transform so many jobs, so many industries, the way we do work, the way and it's still a pretty big unknown. I mean, what we've seen in the arts so far is not a pretty picture. And I think our policies and our legal structures are just catching up to the technology, which is proceeding at a pace I don't think anybody imagined. And there are some other really important factors that are affecting the economy and the workforce, such as demographic change, along with most other states in the country and certainly around the globe. This is an aging population. And California has our population just keeps getting older. And that means a few things. It means that people are aging out of the job market. In some ways, that might be creating opportunities for people who've historically been left behind. It creates opportunities for individuals as they move out of the labor market to reinvent themselves at another phase in life. And I think for many people that may mean, I'll tell you about my best friend who's going to spend the night at her house here, who as a child, her passion was theater, and became a lawyer and worked very dutifully as a lawyer. And when she was able to retire, she went back to community theater. So I think part of that reinvention can be a reconnection to the arts. But an aging population also means that we need people to take care of ourselves, our family members, as they get older. And there's a huge shortage now, and a looming projected shortage of care workers, which is going to get even worse as immigration restrictions come into place. And California's economy and culture have been consistently revived by the immigrants who have come here. And as those are, as immigration is restricted right now, that has a big impact on the economy. Again, through the work I've been able to do with the Q, I really have come to appreciate some of the unique pressures on the creative economy. Out-of-state competition, global competition, AI, and yet the importance of arts for California's economy as a whole, for our communities, and for individuals' well-being, I think are more important than ever, and certainly survival now. I mean, I think when I thought about your question, Danielle, I kept thinking about resiliency right now, both for the sector as a whole and for people who want to do creative work and whose passion in life is creative work. And I think I put on my old hat as a career counselor and career development person, and when I think about what I would say to a young person or a person trying to, at any age, trying to make it, I think we want to think more expansively about creative jobs in non-creative sectors, such as the example we always use is somebody doing web design in an accounting firm, as well as all the myriad ways that people's creativity comes out at work. we also have to expand opportunities for work-based learning, for using our hands in learning, and for having work experience starting ideally in middle school, certainly in high school, and in higher ed, for people to be able to explore different options, almost try on different work settings and jobs and tasks, see how they fit, and to build their skills in workplace settings. And I think in the arts, that's particularly important. And we don't have enough career navigation in the system. I mean, earlier in my career, when I was doing more career coaching, I would almost think of working with artists in a kind of a dual career approach. You know that the center of your life is your painting, your music, your drama. What else can you do where you can work the fewest number of hours and bring in money to support yourself? I hate that some people have to make that choice and want to think that we can do more to build out the creative economy so that people can have more unified careers. But I do think the personal resilience and building out secondary skill sets are good survival tools. And would love to see from a policy perspective the state do more to foster careers in the arts. We had a wonderful experience with Creative Corps, during COVID and recovery in COVID. Is the fiscal situation, it's a harsh reality right now. Can we reinvent that? But I think we have to figure out ways of promoting arts and careers and in arts as a really strong priority.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really taking away we're not only in this massive shift at the federal level, which will have tremendous impacts on the arts and cultural sector, because by and large, when we talk about the arts and cultural sector, we're talking about nonprofits. When we talk about the creative economy, we're also including nonprofits, but we're also talking small businesses, as well as you pointed out, major studios. And all of that is undergoing a shift unlike anything I think we can even wrap our heads around. Not only is there a shift in terms of Los Angeles really finally acknowledging that it is the new Detroit, and that was printed in ink in the LA Times, quoted by Mike Miller, who is the head of IATSE in Los Angeles. So it's not my words, although it did come up at one of our Q meetings. I also think that there's a tremendous pressure on our ways of being and the ways in which we think about social and community resiliency. The more that we are divided, and I just want to recognize that this was just brought up in public comment, the more we are divided, the more we will not collaborate and coordinate in areas of mutual interest. And that's the power of creativity in the arts. We're also really entrepreneurial, and by and large, as a maker, as an artist, as a creative worker, you are an entrepreneur. Even in your nonprofit organization, you are a small business. And so, Tara-Lynn, from a systems perspective, because you are all working at the system level, what are some of the ways in which we can learn about how OSBA, and I'm talking to you as a head of a sister agency, you have a phenomenal technical assistance program and you have regional approach to your services. What can we, as an arts sector and a creative sector, learn about how to better do that work?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I hope I can get it all in here. I've had so many thoughts listening to Derek and Abby speak, and the first thought, I think in pictures. So the first thought I had was what fertile ground we have here in California. And when you have fertile ground, almost anything will grow. But to Derek's point, we need to be intentional and we need to be very strategic about how we grow industries across the state. We very early on in my office took to the 13 regions, and we have very intentionally designed programs. Like, for example, our Accelerate California program, we have a hub in every single region. Of the 122 technical assistance and small business support centers, we have multiple centers in every region. So we have to be strategic if we are going to grow the sectors where there is high potential for job growth. To your point, Danielle, about being entrepreneurial, right? Most of the time, when folks are setting out to be entrepreneurs, they think about the jobs that they can create. They forget to count their own job as a job. They forget to put themselves on the payroll. And so one of the things that we do with our small business technical assistance, we have a network that we've renamed SCALE. It stands for Success, Capital Access, and Leadership for Entrepreneurs. One of the reasons why we are so proud of that, not just because it is a single word acronym, which is hard to come by in government, but because it is encompassing. It's encompassing of sectors, it's encompassing of the types of services, really from startup and legal formation, all the way through access to capital for growth and maturation and exit for owners. So it's a support system that our small businesses do not graduate from. It is a system that you can enter at any point of maturation, again, from startup to exit. And we are connected to a whole ecosystem of providers, specialists. We have more than 1,000 counselors that speak 15 to 20 languages. I think at our height, we were at 30 different languages and dialects spoken throughout the network. So we really have curated very intentionally a system, an ecosystem that will provide support to varying different sectors and definitely inclusive of the creative economy. I also need to get a shout out to demand that the creative economy has shown us in the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund program, which is really a type of workforce development where, to Abby's point, I think you used the word dignity, where we are trying to provide a basic level of performance and financial support and dignity to the folks that work in the creative economy, which is very necessary. We like to say in my department, we're not afraid to call a thing a thing. And so we're doing that here with the creative economy and saying that if we are not intentional about providing a ground floor from which all companies can spring forward, then we're really not doing the job that we say that we're doing, providing access in the economies and communities across the state of California. So we like to be as forward-looking and thinking as we can about our approach to program development and inclusivity in our programming. I hope I addressed that.
Yeah, I think you did, and I'm curious because I'm going to just speak on behalf of myself. Like I got into this work because I felt that it is, I call it the binding agent, right? We are the accelerator, the binding agent, the secret sauce that makes life worth living, right? We want our family, we want our culture, we want our community, we want to breathe fresh air and drink clean water and have access to shelter and food. But the thing that we do is uniquely human is that we create. And I am really curious about how important profit is in this framework, especially within a small business framework, because again, just because we're nonprofits doesn't mean we can't pull a profit, right?
Come
And
on,
we've had this
sister.
deficit mentality for a minute, but like, what is that, and especially now with the abundance movement happening, what is profit and what does return on your investment mean, and how do you factor that in your world?
I love the question. Absolutely love the question, and we did not prep this. Thank you very much.
We didn't prep it. That was a zinger. And,
How
and
many-
this is all for the panel too, so y'all can.
So, how many nonprofits in the room? Right on. And you're all in business, right? And you all did the exact same legal formation that every other business in the state of California did. I say that because I always tell the leaders of nonprofits, nonprofit is a tax status. It cannot be your state of mind. You are in business to be as efficient and as profitable as you possibly can. That's right. Because when you are, the greater the contribution is to the community in which you operate. My position is that you are a community institution. When you are running a business, when you have doors that are open and people are coming in to buy your wares, to consume your wares, to experience your wares if it's creative, right? It's an experience. You sell an experience. That is community building. It is community enriching. It is a community institution. And we learned a few years back exactly how important our community institutions are. For many, it's the third space. It is a place where anniversaries are celebrated. It is a place where birthdays are celebrated. It is where meetings are had. It is the annual family get-together. So you all have experiential contribution that doesn't exist in so many other sectors. And I think that that's also, it's a double-edged sword, because it's also what creates the vulnerability that I think that the sector has experienced and the disrespect that it has experienced economically. And I think Derek's program and the strategy that the administration has adopted about holistically looking at jobs and the value of the contribution to the communities in which they exist, to the regional economies, really creates the groundwork and the basis for us to build a very powerful economic engine in the state, even more powerful than it is now, for the creative economy, which I say because that's how we call it, but really, the creative economy shouldn't be seen as a separate economy from the economy as a whole. So a stronger creative economy means a stronger California economy, and the placement and the respect that the sector deserves as a whole.
I mean, I'm opening it to the panel.
I worked for a few years in the travel and tourism industry doing like place-based economic development on the Central Coast. The Central Coast, I worked in San Luis Obispo County. We used to fight with the ag industry and say, you know, if you would take your wine tasting rooms out of the ag production economic impact side, the travel and tourism industry would be the largest sector in San Luis Obispo County. And as we were thinking about that model, and something that stuck with me for a long time, is this reality that we were trying to build a place where people wanted to visit, right? We wanted people to come. And where do you want to go visit? You want to go to places where there are beautiful streets and murals, and it's like the creative and arts are everywhere. I mean, that's at least where I want to go. So imagine that with me. I'm assuming you all are in that same space. But like, generally speaking, you want to go to you want to build a place where people want to visit. But if you build a place where people want to visit, you inherently start to build a place where people want to live, right? I visited Sacramento like every long weekend I could for like 4 years, because this is where I wanted to be, because we would come here and experience the community and the culture, and I would hear incredible music, and it was this really great place. And so if you build a place where people want to live, you build a place where people have to work. And they either are creating entrepreneurial opportunities for themselves, they're finding new jobs, they're leaning in on the opportunities that are there. And if you create a place where people want to work, you're creating a place where investment has to be. You, like it or not, we have to imagine, how are we spurring and creating new opportunities for investment in this community? And if you build a place where people want to invest, you start to build a place where people want to visit also. And so for us, it starts to be about this reality that we have to be investing in the types of place-based activities, which for me is so anchored in the realities and the opportunities of the creative economy, if we ever want to reimagine and re-envision manufacturing, and if we ever want to create a clean energy space, and if we ever want life sciences industry, so many of those other industries, whether they realize it or not, are so hyper-dependent on the creative economy and on creating places where folks want to go. And if there's one challenge that I could give to you all, it's let's figure out how to tell that story in a different way. You all have done a fabulous job, and California for the Arts has done an incredible job over the last couple of years shaping that message around the importance of the creative economy. But truly, truly, no one wants to live in a place that is boring, right? Like, no one wants to live in a place that doesn't have that creative vibe and spirit and the opportunity to go experience life and the glue that keeps us together, right? You all are the thing that unlocks opportunities for us to grow all of the other priority sectors that communities and regions have started to identify, and the jobs that they want to have in the future.
Abby, do you want to have anything to say to this?
Yeah. I loved seeing all the hands going up from people in nonprofits, and you have a voice. You have a very powerful voice. And over the last few years, I think the arts nonprofits and the whole community of nonprofits have been very successful in difficult times, getting advance payment, making sure that nonprofits can receive public funding where they didn't before. And I would encourage you to use that voice for the communities you serve. I think both, I'm surrounded by the case for arts and thriving economies, the case for arts in the business community, and I would just encourage you to use that collective voice, because it makes a difference. And artists tend to have very beautiful voices, and you do it so well.
I agree with that, and I'm also thinking about our systems, right? So here we are. We have these three policies, these four policies that are really trying to forecast and set up California through a region-up approach. And we've got California in the House right now. So I'm curious, as the architects are here with us today, and you are absolutely saying, use your voice. In where, right? This is the regional approach, so connecting with that regional jobs first group, right? And I gotta give it to Julie Baker and the team, because they started the conversation when it was surf. And they got the creative economy and creative workers in the conversation. We wouldn't even be here today. But now, yeah, I think you have to give, right? You have to give that network is really, really important. And you are advocates and you are place-based. So how do you kind of move that within your locality? And then how do you, because there's so much of it is also about education, One thing that Derek said that really has me thinking a little bit. Yeah, we want to be able to go to places where it's creative. One of the things that I think is that every place in California is creative, right? There's no shortage of creativity because we are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole as human beings. What we often lack in communities, and look, I grew up in public housing on public assistance, and I don't have a high school degree. Like, I didn't, if I didn't have the nonprofit arts and cultural sector, if I didn't have a place where I could find a way to volunteer and learn my skill sets and actually apprentice all the way to be the head of the California Arts Council, I would likely not even have the ability to imagine a future for myself. Like, that's real. And those are the communities that we serve, and those are the communities we fight for. So there's no shortage of creativity, but there is a shortage of the platforms, of the access to capital, of the systems of acknowledgement. And what can we do from a systems perspective, this is a panel question, that will help drive those platforms and those systems of acknowledgement and resources, that capital, into communities to uplift where community creativity exists, full stop.
If I may, Danielle.
Please. Please.
You struck a chord there, and you made me think last Friday, the event in Oakland. There was a young woman who did a poem, a beautiful young Black woman who did a poem. She's about 17, 18 years old. And she reminded me of my own daughter, who is about to turn 32 and working on her PhD at UC Berkeley. And right on. But she wasn't always there. And poetry is what helped her get there. Yes, because somebody mentored her. You just talked about mentoring. And somebody cared for her, and somebody helped her develop voice. And so many of our young people are in a world that's moving fast, that's more complicated than it was when we were younger. It's complicated by AI, it's complicated by phones, it's complicated by graphic images they may not yet understand. It's complicated by economic conditions that are cruel. So having voice and developing voice is a critical part of maturation of us as people. And without the arts, without the thespians of the world, right? Without the poet laureates, there is no voice. And I think one of the reasons why art resonates with us all is because it speaks to some part of us. It speaks to our core, no matter who you are, no matter the style of art. There is some art that speaks to you, that makes you want to be a part of whatever it is that you are witnessing or experiencing. And that's critical to who we are as humanity. It is something to be valued. It is something to be developed. It is something to be cherished. And I'm proud that this administration has taken the steps and a holistic approach from labor, from strategy, jobs, small business, that we are lifting it up as a whole and honoring our people, right? Because we are, contrary to what some people are trying to sell us today, we are a state of people, by the people, for the people, in a larger place that is still by the people, for the people. And if we don't develop voice, if we don't develop tolerance, if we don't develop acceptance, then we do ourselves a disservice, whether we're talking about finances or not.
Abby?
I think part of having that voice, and I would put this out as a call, although the arts community has done so well, is developing the narrative and storytelling. And I think there's more to do in that. When you think of healthcare, behavioral health, and the role of the arts in people's emotional well-being, in what we learned through the Q, Stanford is experimenting with prescriptions for arts, knowing its therapeutic value. I think this state, the voters in this state passed an amendment, putting aside dollars for arts education in school. I mean, that was a huge victory, and I think a recognition of the value of arts in brain development, in emotional development for children, developing both sides of the brain, the importance of arts as we age, and often through neurological illnesses strokes have to redevelop parts of those brains. So I think there's a thread of the value of arts that could even be pulled in different directions, in different kinds of very powerful narratives.
I think it's also really important for folks. We have set a lot of new tables over the last couple of years in communities, and I mean, I will say it again, and every day that I can. Like Julie, I think, and California for the Arts played a really interesting role facilitating and creating those opportunities for many of your organizations to participate in the regions. It's really important for you all to remember, and for us to remember, that we have been speaking completely different languages for a very long time, right? And as we figure out how to sit at these tables together, as exhausting as you may think it is critically important that you continue to educate us on the economic and workforce and business sides about the role of your industry, just as it's equally important for us to continue educating you on how we're thinking about the economy and the levers that we think we can pull to create new opportunities. And if we can, start to become bilingual facilitators and intermediaries to talk back with the constituencies and the people that we're serving in our spaces. And so for you all, continuing to engage with the regional collaboratives on the Jobs First space, getting involved with the regional intermediaries in the K-16 collaboratives, also in your 13 regions, calling your SBDC provider network and saying, hey, did you know about the creative economy? And can I educate you on the types of businesses and the subset of the creative economy that's here in our community? And how do we build out programs to attract new businesses to come take advantage of these services? We've got to figure out how to do that better together. And you're not starting from a disadvantage, because really no industry knows how to do this well. But, and we don't know how to do it really well. We are figuring out what it means to humble ourselves and come from this perspective of, we just haven't done this in California for a very long time, if ever, right? It's been 20 years since we've had an economic development strategy. The last master plan for education was from the 1960s, right? Like, we don't know how to do this, and so we're building this muscle together. And while people like Danielle are critical within the administration to helping us shape what that conversation looks like, we are all only but one voice, right? Like, you all have to continue to be proactive in these spaces and teach us and educate us about what that can look like and how we can make those connections together.
Yeah, I'm really having a heart day. And, when we heard the former chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, Dr. Maria Rosaria Jackson, speak this morning, and she talked about the power of partnerships, and you all have really talked about the power of partnerships today. And a few things that she talked about is that you have to be at the table with people. You have to develop the relationship. You have to listen to each other, and you can't fast track it. It's not a transaction, because we're actually all in this together, but we're all doing it from different lever points. And the extraordinary Laura Zucker, if she's still here, she used to talk when I was in Los Angeles about how you identify the levers and then figure out how to move the levers, and then you have to figure out how to move the levers in sequence, all while the world is turning, right? And we do that in this moment. Like, I kind of feel like we talked about resiliency, we talked about partnership, we talked about what success might look like, but I wonder if we could take a little bit of a moment just to say, okay, so if y'all go out and start really educating on the region first side, what else do we need to think about internally keeping this conversation going? Because if you all remember last year, there was a proposal to place the Arts Council within GoBiz. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up, because I'm agnostic, right? I actually work for the governor, and the governor is going to give us the budget and tell us what he wants us to do. But what I'd like to actually figure out is, how do we keep a partnership? Because it's not about an acquisition, it's about a conversation. It's about how we advance the work of mutual interest for the people of California. And this is where the nonprofit, arts, and cultural sector, we are in total alignment, because we are public benefit, we are public good. And so I would just, I don't know if we're even near time, but I feel like we are, and I think we got some wrap up. So I'm gonna leave this to this group and say, can we please keep the conversation going? Can we keep the language learning? And if there's one thing that I at the California Arts Council, or that we as this field can do, what would that be? How do we support your efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I would start by saying, you know, we're pretty proud to say this administration has been more focused on economic and workforce development than any prior administration, at least in modern history in California. And I get the feels because we have 19 months left. And I've never gone through a gubernatorial transition, right? And so for me, we're at this point of saying, God, one, if we could only have 2 more years, we could just blow the roof off of this thing. But, you know, conversation for another day or over drinks. But how do we work over the next 19 months to build out those partnerships and make sure that we are institutionalizing the partnership? Not that we have it figured out in the next 19 months, because we're not gonna, but how do we figure out how to institutionalize this framework and build the systems in, so that when the next governor comes in, whomever she or he is, simply says, this is the way we do economic and workforce development. This is the way we prioritize and invest in the creative economy. This is the way in which we steward opportunities for all Californians to participate, have a good paying job, and have access to that job. That's the work that we are thinking about for the next 19 months. And we need your help, right? We need your help in ensuring that we're creating those opportunities, and ensuring that when we hand the keys over in January of 2027, you all are standing at the front of the line telling the next governor, no, 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 this is how we do this. We do this through partnership, we do this through communication.
And I wouldn't wait until the next governor is elected. I mean, we may, you know, be leaving with the administration, but you are here. And it is, you know, upon you to, you know, keep the messages going, build that narrative. You know, you talked about being at the table. As I was listening to you, Danielle, 2 words came to mind: empathy and relationship. You know, and as you said, I mean, progress is not done through quick transactions. It's done through the deep work of relationship and partnership and listening and, you know, keeping your eye on that prize. So whether it's being involved in the campaigns, whether it's keeping the message going, you will transcend these administrations. And whatever structures and people are in place, the message just really has to persist.
And I think I would say that everything that we do in OSBA, we do it through partners. Every single one of our programs, we've had outreach partners, we've had engagement partners, we've had payment processing partners. We have 122 support centers that are partners across the state. We partner with other agencies. So partnership is essential to the work that we do. And we believe it takes strong relationships and strong partnerships to build this economy one small business at a time.
That's a wrap. I love leaving these words for this closing plenary session. I want to thank you, Dr. Tara Lynn Gray, Abby Snay, and Derek Kirk. And I also just want to say, these are extraordinary stewards of the public trust, and California is extraordinarily lucky and fortunate to have you on the team. So thank you so much for your partnership.